Thank you all for coming. And thanks so much to Elena and Emilian for inviting me. So I will just try to briefly go through what the project was all about, and then I'll mostly after that just talk about the process of doing a project like this and the difficulties that arise in doing something like this and what you can learn about it. Let's see how it goes. And for listening, I figured that the main thing I could bring that would be unique in a way was some Portuguese music, from some experimental Portuguese music from our dictatorship period, or just after that. So let's see how it goes. Okay. So let me just say that I'm usually not in this position. Usually my job is to invite people over to speak or to perform as well. So let's see how it goes. This is also not, I don't come from an academic perspective. I'm not a historian or a sociologist. So the whole project is an archival project, but is not done following set archivistic rules or what have you. It's very punk in a way, the way we approach this. Let's see. So my background, I actually studied philosophy, so that only helped me in kind of doubting everything I do, in a way. So this is also about that. There's actually a very well-known philosopher's theory of knowledge that says that we basically are always inventing stuff that's not there. So we always have two levels of simplification or of falsification of reality in order to actually live and to survive. And his example, this will make sense in the end, I think. And his example is always, for instance, when we look at one tree, we see it's filled with individual leaves and branches. None of them are the same as the other. But we have to form an idea of tree that does not correspond to this specific tree or that specific tree. We have to create a concept. And then we have to use language to communicate it. So we're always, in a way, two levels removed from what is really there, because everything in reality is absolutely unique and non-repeatable. We are kind of overwhelmed with reality, so we have to use these mechanisms of simplifying and of using concepts and language to be able to communicate our experience to ourselves and to others. So we are actually constantly dealing with things that are not exactly there the way we think they are. And that we have art to be reminded that we are creators, because we are always creating these concepts and simplifications and ideas. So that's why the presentation and the whole process of the project is actually about attempts and generalizations and oversimplifying things. And the important thing is that we kind of keep in mind that we have these processes of simplifying what is complex, and that's the only way to move forward most of the times. And what's really important is that we have that in mind, that we don't take our own constructions to be the real thing or to be what the truth is, or just one version of the truth. So we have art to remember that, to remind ourselves that we are creators. And music especially, which is what this is all about. Music is it usually doesn't represent anything. It's not a painting, for instance, so it doesn't really have any direct correspondence to an object or to something that we perceive in our day-to-day. So it's maybe especially an especially good reminder of something that's out there, but we can't really quite put our finger on what it is and how to express it. There's actually this really interesting book by David Stubbs called Fear of Music, which is why do people get Rothko but not Stockhausen? Meaning, why do visual arts, contemporary arts, are kind of well accepted now, or at least people have an idea of what they're all about, but experimental music remains totally alien to most people. It's something that, if people are not initiated in a way, they don't understand that as music even. So it's an interesting read as well to approach this topic. So we have to spend our lives reacting to categories and narratives and identities that we have created that we forget were created by us. And this will make sense soon. So what is the Unearthing the Music project? How did it come about? This is actually, I think, a nice example of an idea that comes out from like the guidelines for an application. We wanted to do an application to a program that was called Europe for Citizens, which is about remembrance. It has a political aspect, approach European history in a way. And this idea came to mind because I had this sort of fascination with Eastern Europe. Why do I have it? I'm not actually sure. I'm not the only Westerner to have this fascination with what we thought was socialist Eastern Europe or the Soviet Union, all of itself. But we are, in Portugal, we are also not quite Western, though we're in the extreme west of the continent, because we had a dictatorship as well, us in Spain, that lasted 50 years. 50 years. It ended in 1974. It was a very isolationist regime. It was a dictatorship that didn't want anything to do with modernization or with progress at all. It was something that, especially after the Second World War, they just wanted time to stay still. As close to the 19th century we could be, the better for them. So in many ways, it was still a very rural and even feudal regime in many regions of the country. And for us, also a bit for Spain, but for Portugal and for my generation, being socialist or being communist was equated with opposition to the regime. These were the people that kind of gave their lives to try and get us out of that situation. They were living underground lives, they were being arrested, and after the revolution, they taught people how to organize, they taught people how to read, and maybe luckily for us, they never held power, so they didn't really have the chance to fuck up when being in power. So this is also an important thing. So it still stayed like a romantic idealization that socialism and communism was something that we should still strive for. And actually, the Portuguese constitution still says, I'm not 100% if it still says or if it was changed like 5 years ago, but I think it's still there, that the country should tend towards socialism. So it's still in the constitution of the country. So this, to explain that, it meant, and it still means maybe, a different thing to us, Portuguese, and maybe my fascination with Eastern Europe comes a bit from that. So anyway, we thought this was a good idea, and the project was approved, and then we started to investigate. At first, in the first stage, just Eastern European experimental music that lasted for a year, but we'll get there. So yeah, so being from Portugal, it's the West, but we feel a lot of similarities or affinities or fascination with what was the East. And now just a little bit of music. This was, I'll still talk a bit about my background, but after this. This is from 1967, and this was at the time, and still is in a way, the absolute vanguard of Portuguese music. So a little bit of background. So I grew up in the 80s and 90s in Portugal. This was before the internet. Everybody here that's kind of in my age range will remember perhaps that getting to know music kind of involved a lot of effort. It still does today, but a different type of effort. So you had to read a lot of every magazine you could get your hands on, every newspaper you could get your hands on, record reviews. You traded tapes with your friends. You loved something. You wanted to share it. You recorded a tape. You brought it to school. You made friends because they also had the same interest as you had. You would stay up late listening to radio shows to tape your favorite songs. So it was, you went to secondhand shops, whatever. It was a very time-consuming process. And records, of course, were expensive. I would save like for months to buy a CD or a vinyl record. So this idea of having to look for music and then discovering huge rewards and discovering something you loved and loving to share it, this kind of in the information that you had about some records was totally incomplete, and you would spend years reading about bands before you even get the chance to listen to any of the sounds they made. I have many examples like that. And I think this was basically, with different means, maybe very similar here in many other countries. I mean, I think maybe the level of access would have varied a little bit, but the process was basically the same. And copying was an infrastructure to get to know and to share music, in a way. So piracy was a good thing. It was it was piracy for freedom, basically. So it was just access. It was a treasure hunt, and so this. I don't think I would have thought about a project like this if I didn't have that background, or if I didn't spend so many years being obsessive about discovering music, or having the idea that there's still so much more to discover and that the past is always surfacing, new things are always surfacing from the past. But at the same time, I really don't have the profile of a music collector or of a systemic music obsessive or archiver. I mean, cataloging everything. I tried it for a while, but then I had to give it up. I mean, there are people who remember every musician that plays on a record, what studio it was recorded in, what's the year it came out, what's the label. So yeah, I kind of get lost in the abundance. I'm not that type of collector, and I'm also not that type of archiver. So, but I do love maps, and so we explored the main part of the project as a database, sort of like a wiki for experimental music in these countries, and then all of these, of course, and the big one. But maps are very useful, but they can also help you get lost because it's just too many things. You have to rely on categories, and like I said at the beginning, categories are mostly fictions. They become unstable. They simplify too much, and they homogenize things that are totally different between themselves. So this is a difficulty that that we had during the project. It's hard to categorize music, of course. I mean, the song I just played, you have to trust me that it's absolutely very experimental in many ways, but it does sound like traditional music at the same time. So it's not an easy thing to categorize. So when we started doing the project, and again, for the first year, the project lasted for 5 years in total, and for the first year, it had a different funding source, Europe for Citizens. It was just about Eastern Europe. Me, a Portuguese person, doing a project about music in Eastern Europe. I was very naive. And the first version of the project, like the subtitle, was Creative Music Under European Totalitarianism. I actually used the word totalitarianism for something that I really had no idea what I was talking about. I'm not from here. I don't know it. And we had big problems with that. We approached a lot of people, collectors from Serbia, from Romania, from Hungary, and some of them, they really took notice of our using the word totalitarian. I'm not going to go into that, but words matter. It was a big problem for some people. Most people actually didn't care, or they kind of saw that it might have been a bad word, a bad choice of words, and they kind of realized what we wanted to do. So, but there were all types of questions being raised. So, and after we switched to the non-democratic Europe, which was the later variation of the project, at that time we decided to include Portugal, Spain, and Greece, which had a dictatorship, not a long one, but it did happen, a military dictatorship. So to kind of show that, okay, we also had these problems, which were politically on the opposite spectrum, but in practical terms, maybe things were very similar. We also had problems. And we decided to use non-democratic Europe. It's not a better expression, actually. So what is democratic, etc. We can talk a lot about this, and then is it legitimate to just group Poland with Albania, with Yugoslavia, with Lithuania? Did they actually have that much in common besides what we thought was the socialist regimes? Maybe they did. What counts as underground? Some of the music that we have in the project was experimental, but it was very much above board. It was official. It was sanctioned by the government or even funded by the governments, and some of it was popular. Some of it, of course, was almost clandestine and almost illegal. So, again, underground can mean a lot of different things. So, experimental for whom, etc. And then again, with the issues of totalitarianism in Eastern Europe and non-democratic Europe, we realized that the West, the proper West, not the Portuguese West, there's this, again, this fetishization of Eastern Europe, of socialism, like every country was the same, and people would, when YouTube was a thing, people would share like videos of Soviet disco, like Russian people trying to imitate funk music, etc., and they would be laughed. It was just, it was kind of a kitsch thing in a way for a lot of people. And then you had all types of, you had a record coming out called Kosmischer Laufer, which was like a label, they fictionalized an East German Olympic program that had electronic music being made just for athletes to compete and to train. And they put out a double compilation of that. It turns out it was a hoax. The music had just been made for that some years before. But that just tells us that a lot of people thought this was just a neat thing, like a kitsch thing, something that could just be a curiosity in a way. And yeah, and then a big difficulty is that a project like this would never happen without the internet, but then with the internet, we also have an abundance of everything. It's hard. It's just many historical things are just turned into aesthetical things or things to contemplate, not really question or deepen. So we'll also go back to this matter of abundance. But yeah, so there were many difficulties in doing a project like this. I mean, conceptually, that I wasn't even aware when I started. It was just pure enthusiasm. Let's see how it goes. Yeah, so we decided to do an archive, a database, and again, no archive is ever complete. It's not easy to categorize things, but again, we still did it. So there were some things that we learned in the process or that we discovered, but just first, so there's a book, like Elena showed, and that's possibly the main reason for me being here today. It's also, right now, maybe the main reason for the project to still be getting known and to still be kind of alive, and new people are getting to the project. So the book is a very collaborative thing, and it's also important to mention that the whole project was collaborative. I mean, I may have had the idea for it, but it wouldn't have happened if I didn't reach out to people that I didn't know and kind of convinced me to help. So we had formal partners in Latvia, in Romania, Octav, which is here, who is here, in Slovakia, in Hungary, in Germany, in Serbia, then in Portugal, in Spain, and we reached out to a lot of people in many countries that could have material that we could reshare, insert into the database, etc. So that's why also many of the entries, I'm just gonna do a quick browse here. They are very diverse. So we have like profiles, so people and bands and groups in the database with different degrees of completeness in the information that we provide about them. This is also to show that many of the people that we came across and that we studied don't have that much information still surviving. And besides the people or the profiles, we have what we call content, which is basically essays or articles about some specific local scenes, like this one. Some of them we commissioned, some of them we asked to republish. We had this maybe naive illusion that this database would be the place to go to if you were interested in these musics. It can still be, but it's not as complete as maybe we thought it would be. So the entries are very diverse in style and in depth. It's, again, a very non-academic approach to archiving. Some texts are academic, others are like personal accounts of people who lived some of these scenes, who were musicians or were audiences. Some are just speculation, some are interviews. So it's, again, very diverse type of material. We also did 2 records as well. This was the first one, and this is mostly focused on almost every Eastern European country. So this was in the first iteration of the project that we did, though the cover is of a factory in Barreiro in Portugal, our own city, which we always felt it was brutalist enough to be in Eastern Europe in a way, but that's our idea of Eastern Europe. There's stuff like this everywhere. And this is the second one, more recent triple LP, and this is a very specific subject. This is just music that was released on cassettes in East Germany in the late 70s until the early 90s. So it's one of the persons on the main team of the project, Alexander Pelleman. He was an East German punk. He lived through that era, and now he's an obsessive collector, but he knows everything about it. And this is, 2 hours of music that just existed on cassettes back in the 80s. And it's mostly punk music, some electronic music, but of course it's very lo-fi as well. But it's really interesting listen. So the book again. Is like the project, like the database, is a collection of unrelated entries, many different styles. All of these are just entry points into the many angles that a subject like this can have and what this project covers. It's just a collection of perspectives. Some people wrote about scenes that they were a part of, others were journalists, others were proper academic researchers, and these were all written for the books. These are all retrospectives. It's what they remember of things, which in a way it's also, it's not how things actually were, it's how they remember it. It's the most we can do. It's all subjective, and it's again an interpretation of complex realities. We have articles about jazz, for instance, and how it had such different meanings, both for musicians and for the audiences, depending on which country we were. The article on jazz we have here is comparing East Germany to Poland, which were bordering countries, and jazz in those countries in this period meant many different things and sounded very different as well. So it's an interesting angle to get into, again, the differences between the Eastern European countries, which were many. We have performance art, which in many cases was much more political and much more interventive and socially active than other types of music being made at the time. We have the state-sponsored electronic music studios, which is something that I'm really interested in. I will talk a bit about this as well soon. We have punk music, of course, both during the dictatorships, so as opposition in a way, and also, and I found this, that especially in Portugal and Spain, since the regimes ended in the 70s, mid to late 70s, punk came only after that, but it was an expression of deep frustration that just being nominally democratic didn't really, it wasn't really enough. The countries were shit, basically. So punk was a big thing in the 80s and the late 70s in our part of the West. And we have stories of people who were just kind of lonely visionaries that just wanted to make the music that they needed to make. I mean, I think regardless of political regimes, I think there's people who just really need to make music because they'll listen to music within their heads and they have to put it out. And there's people who want to make music because they need a sense of community or of belonging. There's other people that make music because they want to be admired, which is also very legitimate. I think all of these and more are still true, and they were true back then as well. But more things that I learned doing the project. The question of access, which is who gets to make music when things around you are not easy. I mean, instruments, let's just pretend that these bad things that I'm talking about are not happening now, because many of them are still happening, even if we're all democratic. Instruments were absolutely prohibitively expensive. Nobody could just go up and pick a guitar or even save money for a guitar. That just didn't happen. Technology was really hard to access. You couldn't really import music or instruments, or maybe you weren't even allowed to do so. Listening was many times like a happening, like a private, small gathering of people that would do something that was maybe not fully allowed or fully legal. And then we can always say that, okay, but then scarcity and oppression, but that can be good. I mean, crisis can be good. They create commitment, and people start networking, and you think outside the box, etc. We have this discourse in capitalist societies many times, which may be true in a way, but scarcity and difficulty of access, it's exclusion. So we should really romanticize exclusion or hardship, because nobody wants that actually. And then there's this little thing that for me was very important doing the project, and it was kind of a paradox that also helped me understand the Portuguese regime in a different lens, which again is the electronic music studios. So in many Eastern European countries, we had electronic music studios that were attached to public radio or public television, and they were funded by the governments. We had a big one in Warsaw, in Bratislava, in Budapest. Maybe Bucharest had one for a while. I'm not even sure. But this was mimicking something that was happening in the West. I mean, with Pierre Schaeffer and Music Concrète and in Stockhausen, you had all these really important electronic music studios in Western Europe. Many of them still exist, where electronic music was basically invented. Avant-garde composition was invented. And for some reason, many socialist regimes thought this was a good thing. Let's also fund some studios like these, because we are also committed in modernity, and we want to compete with the West. We want to show that we are also able to do advanced things in technology. And this is something that didn't happen at all in Portugal or in Spain. Nobody would even dream of this. Again, anything that seemed remotely innovative or contemporary was just to be frowned upon. So as far as I know, as far as in the East, progress was a thing and modernity was a thing. You just had an alternative way of looking for it, different from the capitalist West. You still wanted to compete, at least for a while. In Iberia, nobody wanted to compete with no one. You just wanted to stay isolated, alone. Just preserve what is Portuguese and typical, and be humble, and don't make any fuss, and why be futuristic if we're already such a great country? There's nothing to change. So this of course, decades after this, still affects the Portuguese mindset a lot. But at the time, for music, for experimental music, this meant that you wouldn't even dream of something like an electronic music studio, let alone the government funding this type of research. So in Portugal, back again to my own country, in its music, underground or experimental music was, up until 1974, the year we had the revolution, I dare say that maybe 95% of it, maybe more, were just protest songs rooted in folk music. I mean, every country must have had this type of scene, but this is the only one we had. Whatever could be experimental or underground or protest was rooted in folk music. And we had, of course, a bunch of incredible musicians doing songs like this. I mean, we had a good, maybe a dozen singer-songwriters writing amazing lyrics, really clever lyrics, full of metaphor, of course, and trying to say what they had to say without actually being discovered or understood by the governments. So that music, it was experimental, but it tried a thin line between mainstream acceptance and censorship clearance and being overtly critical. Again, censorship is the same thing as scarcity and exclusion. Oh, but censorship can maybe trigger some extra creativity, etc. That may be true, but it doesn't make it a good thing, of course. Sometimes we might tend to think that art needs suffering in order to be interesting. But even when there's abundance, there's always a type of existential suffering, and that's enough for art to be interesting, in my opinion. We don't need to have shitty political regimes. We don't need to be poor, etc., etc. Being alive sometimes is good enough to have art that uses suffering, I would say. There's always something to be explained, and that's where art comes in. That's what I said in the beginning. So yeah, underground music in Portugal, protest songs, and we're going to listen to some of it now. For me, there's one musician that towers above anybody else, José Afonso, better known as Zeca Afonso. We're going to listen to three songs from the 60s to early 70s, and I'll just say something afterwards. Let me just come up with this profile, so while we listen. Yeah, so this is the man. This is quite a complete entry, actually, so you should totally read it.
Oh meu bem, se tu te fores, como dizem que te vais, como dizem que te vais, deixa-me o teu nome escrito, deixa-me o teu nome escrito numa pedrinha do cais, numa pedrinha locais. Oh, oh, é oh, oh, é oh, oh, é oh, oh, é oh. Quando me mano se for, quando me mano se for, se está en sus alagas, se está en sus alagas, mai la mangada camisa, mai la mangada camisa, e dizem que não chorar, e dizem que não chorar. Oh, oh, é oh, oh, é oh, oh, é oh, oh, é oh. Meu amor vai sobre as ondas, meu amor vai sobre as ondas, meu amor vai sobre o mar, meu amor vai sobre o mar. Ai, quem me dera morrer, ai, quem me dera morrer nas águas do teu olhar, nas águas do teu olhar. Oh, oh, é oh, oh, é oh, é oh, é oh, é oh, é
So, just a few words about this one. This was from 1964, and I'm not going to translate the lyrics, but it's about people saying goodbye to people that are being shipped overseas. And at the time, Portugal was losing its colonies. You had the colonial war. You had all these countries in Africa that were still considered to be part of Portugal: Angola, Cape Verde, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, and the regime decided that they wanted to be independent, like many other countries at the time were striving for independence from England, from France, and most of them kind of were let go. There were some wars, of course, but no, the Portuguese thought that Africa and Goa and India, all of those places were an integral part of Portugal. There's no way we're going to lose them. So they started fighting, and they started shipping Portuguese people to fight the war, to keep the colonies. This was ultimately, after 10, 11, 12 years of war, what kind of brought about the revolution. It took a while. But my father's generation, for instance, they all fought the war. They all went to Africa. Many of them didn't come back. And the lyrics are very explicit about sending somebody overseas. But why weren't they censored? Because this echoes a part of Portugal's history that the regime really loved, which was when we started the colonies 500 years ago. It was amazing. We were discoverers, explorers. We still grew up learning that, even growing up in the 80s and 90s. So it could also be understood as being a song about the old sailors that went to discover new lands, etc. But it was not about that at all. This is some of the ways in which you could kind of find a loophole in what is allowed or not. And his next song is a brief one. It's from '72. I chose it because it's very experimental in nature as well. And by 1972, our dictator, Salazar, was already dead. The regime was still going on, but the main figurehead, he had actually fallen off a chair and had a stroke. This is A very nice metaphor as well for losing power. But it's called O Avô Cavernoso, which means the cavernous grandfather. And the first line is like, the cavernous grandfather established rain and darkness. So it was his elegy to the fallen dictator. But the regime was still on, so it was weaker at this point.
O avô cavernoso instituiu a chuva. O avô cavernoso instituiu a chuva. Ratificou a demora, persignou-se, ninguém o chora agora, perfumou-se. 20.000 léguas de virgens vieram. 20.000 léguas de virgens vieram. Inúteis e despidas, flores de malva, e a banha bem segura sobre a calva. Oh, avô cavernoso, quem viu a tonsura e a tenda dos milagres e a privada. Na tenda que foi nítida conjura, as flores de malva murcham devagar, devagar, até que se ouvem gritos matinadas, até que se ouvem gritos matinadas, até que se ouvem gritos matinadas. O avô cavernoso instituiu a chuva. O avô cavernoso instituiu a chuva. Ratificou a demora, persignou-se, ninguém o chora agora, perfumou-se. 20.000 léguas de virgens vieram. 20.000 léguas de virgens vieram. Inúteis despidas, flores de malva, e a banha bem segura sobre a calva. Oh, avô cavernoso, quem viu a tonsura e a tenda dos milagres e a privada. Na tenda que foi nítida conjura, as flores de malva murcham devagar, devagar, até que se ouvem gritos matinadas, até que se ouvem gritos matinadas, até que se ouvem gritos matinadas, até que se ouvem gritos matinadas.
Okay, so the last one of these three, it's a more, maybe a more explicitly protest song. It's from 1971, so a year before that one. And the regime was already weak at the time, so maybe they didn't really have the capacity to go after Zeka, who was arrested several times, of course, in his lifetime as an artist. But I picked this one mostly because of its musical content. He has a lot of a really diverse output, but one of the things that he managed to do was to integrate what was then the colonies, but to integrate African influences and instruments and musicians themselves into his music. And never, for me, it was nothing of, it wasn't exploitative at all. He just acknowledged that those musical traditions, who at the time were, of course, part of the country or with whom we had deep connections, they were just amazing musical traditions that should be showcased and should have a place in all music that was being made. And so he did really, really interesting and successful crossovers with musicians from the colonies as well. And this is, it's not an upbeat song, not at all, but it's a very hopeful one. And it does have musical influences that are totally from ultramarine Portugal, as it was known back then. It's called Spring Choir.
Lembra-te, canalha, na mortalha, hoje o rei vai nu. Os velhos tiranos de há 1000 anos morrem como tu. Abre uma trincheira, companheira, deita-te no chão. Sempre à tua frente viste gente de outra condição. Ergue-te ao sol de verão. Somos nós os teus cantores da matinal canção. Ouvem-se já os rumores, ouvem-se já os clamores, ouvem-se já os tambores. Livra-te do medo que vem cedo, há do sol queimar. E tu, camarada, põe-te em guarda que te vão matar. Venham lavradeiras, bondadeiras deste campo em flor. Venham enlaçadas de mãos dadas semear o amor. Ergue-te ao sol de verão. Somos nós os teus cantores da matinal canção. Ouvem-se já os rumores, ouvem-se já os clamores, ouvem-se já os tambores. Venha a maré cheia de uma ideia para nos empurrar. Só um pensamento no momento para nos despertar. Aí há mais um braço e outro braço nos conduz, irmão. Sempre a nossa fome nos consome, dá-me a tua mão. Ergue-te ao sol de verão. Somos nós os teus cantores da matinal canção. Ouvem-se já os rumores, ouvem-se já os clamores, ouvem-se já os tambores.
So I just want to briefly go back to the electronic music studios, also to keep with the Portuguese experience. So I'm sure maybe the music made in these electronic music studios has been explored perhaps in this series by other guests in a way. Not that much. I'm not going into that though, but it's it's something that I'm very interested in, but also in the symbolism of these electronic music studios, and in electronic music in particular, and in technology, in the way it changed everything in terms of music. So the electronic music studios, either in France or in Italy or in the Netherlands or in Warsaw, they were basically started by musicians, composers that wanted to make music differently. And after World War II, they suddenly realized that they had a lot of war instruments that could be used to make sounds. They weren't designed to make sounds. You had technology for decoding radio transmissions, for instance. You had oscillators. You had tape, which was obviously used to send messages between allied countries, etc. And somehow they figured out that these machines made sounds and helped them to create sounds and record sounds and cut tape with a scissor and glue it with just glue, all manual processes. And all of this basically was a playground for people who had the vision to start making sounds with it. This was way before computers, of course. So this was an event in history that I was telling Emilian earlier today, that I wish this was more common knowledge to every music lover, that most of the technology that we use to listen to music, and even the very concept of electronic music itself, came from leftover material from the Second World War that was never intended to make music or art in the first place. So I think there's maybe a beautiful metaphor there somewhere. But I mean, there's a lot to be learned, and there are quite some interesting books about the electronic music studios, which I think are fascinating. So we had nothing like that in Portugal, again, and in Spain. We had no state-funded or company-funded electronic music studios. But we did have a couple of experimentally inclined composers that wanted to work and create that type of music. But they had to move abroad and to be able to do it. Not just play music by two of the undisputed electronic music pioneers in Portugal. So both pieces were composed abroad, one in Belgium and another in France. There was just no other way. And the first one is, I'll just open up his profile first, Jorge Peixinho. And this piece is interesting also because the theme, the title is Elegy for Amilcar Cabral. Amilcar Cabral was the leader of the independence movements in Cape Verde and in the Guinea-Bissau. So he composed this in 1973 when we were still at war with them, but he only got to release it publicly in 1978 after the revolution and when they became independent countries officially. This is much more experimental than what we've listened to so far. This is Cândido Lima from 1978. Also, this was made in Paris. Okay, so there wasn't much music like this in Portugal at all at the time, or in Spain, but there had been a lot of music like this going on in the rest of Europe, either capitalist or socialist, for a while now. And there still isn't much music like this in Portugal, of course. These two people, they were brilliant musicians, but they were part of an elite in a way. I mean, all regimes have elites, and again, it's a bit more easy for you because it provides access and opportunities, of course. But yeah, so we'll move on to a lot of less talking now and maybe more music, because I mean, after I tell you about the specific case of Portugal, which is actually what I'm mostly qualified to do so, then things just become very complex and very diverse. There's a lot of music going on everywhere, interesting music. So in many different experiences in different countries, political upheavals, almost revolutions, then going back in time, things getting worse. A lot of stuff happened. So I'll just try to show some music. There's going to be some Portuguese music popping up again, but just kind of almost a random overview of stuff that was being made. So this is from Estonia. Maybe you know of him. Okay, this was the longest track I brought, so thank you for your patience. So now this was from 1981 or 1980 from Estonia, and now we go to 83 back in Portugal. Okay. I'm actually going to skip the next one that I brought, but I wanted to have it here for a particular reason. It's again from Portugal, from 1974, the year of the revolution. And I just love the idea of the song, which the title of the song, which is the title of the record again. It's very telling for the year of the Portuguese Revolution. So the album is called Against the Idea of Violence, the Violence of the Idea, which I think it's quite beautiful and very appropriate to the times that were being lived back then. Let's instead move some 15 years on and go to Russia. And this is, it's another type of folk song, maybe indie folk. This is from Siberia, and this is the only woman that we're going to listen to today, which kind of also shows another dimension to all of this. Of course, that of gender equality, even in regimes that nominally had absolute equality. Maybe for women it only meant having the privilege of having to work as well, in not getting many opportunities in other areas. There are some women in this whole database and in this project, but the balance is just absurd. Unfortunately, it's mostly men everywhere. This is Yanka Diagileva from Siberia. She died really young. She has like a really tragic but very interesting story. She was a punk from Siberia. And the story of her death is not clear. There's a nice documentary about her, made like 2000 perhaps. It's quite old already. And this song was recorded live in Moscow in '89. She would die in '91, so she almost didn't really experience any type of transition or freedom or whatever was found after the Soviet Union. And for me, it's interesting to listen to this because, of course, I don't understand any of the lyrics, but just listening to it, it's easy. It's interesting how this song kind of can fit into both the folk protest song canon, or maybe an evolution which is more contemporary to it, 1991 or 1989, which could be like grunge. I mean, this in a way sounds like it could have come from across the Pacific at the same time. It's totally speculative, of course, but it's also interesting to think about these things. Let's just listen to it.
Оставить Осточертевший обряд на смертоносный снаряд, скрипучий стул за столом, на детский крик за углом, венок из спутанных роз, на депрессивный психоз, психоделический рай, на 3 засов сарай. Мне все кричат: берегись. Мне все кричат: берегись.
Like I said a while ago, in the 80s, punk was really a big thing everywhere. Punk and what was then post-punk. It's still very influential, but it was felt in a lot of music coming from everywhere. I'll show you another Portuguese example, which is a song. This is a very famous. It's a band that in Portugal became kind of like an adjective. So if it sounded avant-garde but pop, people would say it was in this style. It's kind of desperate but celebratory at the same time. It's an interesting song from '87. It's going to be long.
Tu riveli da strada, tu riveli da strada, tu riveli da strada. Tu ritrau, veli da tu ritrau, veli da tu ritrau, veli da tu strada.
So, keeping the same energy, we're going to go to one which is one of the biggest discoveries I made with this project. This Hungarian band whose name I'm never going to even try to pronounce, but I know it's in English. It's called Galloping Coroners, and they were amazing. I'm just going to play 2 songs by them. The first one is from 1986, and it sounds like Spaceman 3. A little bit. It's incredible. This one actually goes on for 7 minutes, so you can get more of this easily. This must have been just incredible watching this live back at the time. I wish. Let's just listen to one more by them from 1990. This is the only thing we're going to listen to today that's in either of these records. It's in the first one. This song. So this one for me had like kind of hints of black metal at the same time, and it's I've always loved this song. It sounds like despair and optimism at the same time. Of course, I don't understand the lyrics, so it's very easy to speculate. And it's 1990, transition year. Then it's the whole thing of writing about music being so hard and so subjective. What do we actually know? We're never close to anything objective when we talk about music. And the feelings that this song makes me feel always kind of remind me of that. Yeah, we're close to the end now. So, a lot of different things, many more still that we could listen to. The only thing they have in common is the place and the time in which they were made. Now, this is from 1950 to 2015 to 20 different countries. So imagine now, I mean, we have too much of everything already now. And what was once hard to find, it's now just too easy. And listening to music now and discovering music now it's at the same time it's just the best it's ever been, but also an absolute nightmare. Because if you're still kind of obsessed or interested in getting to know what's going on now, what new music is being made, or what music from 70 years ago you just discovered, it sounds new to you as well, because times are all mixed now. The timeline is mixed. There's just an abundance of music. It's hard for us to kind of orientate ourselves. There's some discipline in listening, but it also takes time. I mean, when I would save up for a record, I would listen to the same record for a month, even if I didn't like it. So I have these whole albums in my mind that I don't even like, but I know all of them from beginning to end. This does not happen now. It's just impossible. Sometimes it's very unfair to music. Sometimes I listen to something new and I give it like 30 seconds, and if there isn't anything that kind of relates to me immediately, almost instantly, I will probably never go back to it. And it's just unfair for the people who made the music, because 30 years ago I gave second chances, third chances to stuff that I didn't like at the first time. So we all kind of go through this now. Everything is accessible, but we are finite, and especially if we like many different things, if we're not specialists, or if we decide to not specialize on one thing, it can be a blessing, but it's also a big burden. I mean, if we remain curious about too many different things, we'll never actually know any of them. But maybe the point I made in the beginning is exactly that. There's an overabundance of reality, and that no two things are the same. So it's the same process now with just discovering music and art. We just have to realize that's how things are, and do our best to give it our best attention. So I'll just finish with two more songs. They're shorter songs. I selected them because, in a way, they kind of show the path of one type of musician that I was talking about earlier, like the musicians that just need to get the music they have in their minds out. They have to get out of their system and just put it out there. And so a short travel to Eastgerman. This is also a story that's at the edge of what could be eligible or not for the project. I don't know if you know of this musician. He was a guitar player from East Germany. He was born and raised in East Germany, but he only started releasing music after the Berlin Wall fell. So basically, he got fascinated with fingerpicking, American-style primitive guitar music, and he developed his own style. But the most he could hope to be in East Germany at the time was just to be a music teacher. But once the wall came out, he just released like 20 records or something like that. And I got to meet him in Lisbon without even knowing his story. 2005, etc. He already died, but he was a great guy, and his music is really, really interesting. Let's just listen to a short one. It technically fits because it was East Germany, it was before 2000, so. Okay, so we'll finish up with the man we heard at the beginning. His name is Carlos Paredes, a Portuguese musician, which I also believe to have been a genius. He turned the traditional fado guitar. Have you heard of fado? It's like the Portuguese national type of song. It's a very, very sad and mournful song, of course. Tragic music, but with lyrics, and played with the Portuguese guitar, which is a variation of every country. Almost every country has its own type of guitar, of course, its variation. But the Portuguese guitar was used to accompany fado singers. It was never used as a solo instrument before Carlos Paredes came along. So he picked up that instrument and he started making music with it, instrumental music with it. And the instrument itself, because it's associated with fado, and his compositions, I mean, they kind of carry a bit of the endemic sadness that's part of the Portuguese identity, and they kind of combine it with a very avant-garde approach, mostly because nothing of the sort had been done so far, and nothing actually similar has been done so far. And Carlos Paredes, he was outed as a supposed member of the Communist Party before the revolution, so he was in prison. And this could be a nice legend, but he himself, he confirmed this in interviews before he passed away, that he composed this song, and the whole album where this song comes from, which was released in 1971, he composed it in his head, in prison. He didn't have an access to an instrument or to a guitar, so he would spend his days just playing air guitar, just practicing fingerings, and just imagining the music, composing it in his mind, and actually moving his fingers to no guitar every day, obsessively. And so when he got out, he just went and recorded it and released it. It's just a really powerful story that apparently happens to actually also be true. So let's listen to it, and yeah, we're done. Okay.
Thank you. We have 50 minutes for questions.
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay, we have questions. Something to say about what you heard?
if you're all too shy, you can also talk a little bit outside if you prefer. It's okay. But yeah.
Can you talk a bit about the two records that you have on the table?
Oh, yeah. So this is a compilation. They're both compilations, of course. Cheekily entitled Notes from the Underground, Dostoevsky reference. Not my title, but good enough. Experimental Sounds Behind the Iron Curtain. So this was basically the end of the first version of the project that was only about Eastern Europe, like I said at the beginning. And this was just like the book is for the current project. It was just a way to, this is what we've been doing. So we have selections from almost every country in Eastern Europe. And, but the music is very eclectic. We have, I mean, academic composers, we have punk bands, we have proto-electronic music. Yeah, you can look it up over here if you want to. In the end, it's a double vinyl, this one. And the third, I'm actually not super qualified to talk about the music itself because it's very diverse, but this one is unified by a theme, the theme of Eastgerman Tape Underground music. So this is mostly bands and solo musicians that had like a home setup that they could record with. And they went into the tape trading circuit, basically. Some of them could play live, others weren't even a live thing. It was just like bedroom projects. But Alex Pelleman, which is my colleague in the project, he's the expert in punk music. And again, he was an East German punk. He would have been able to spend like 10 hours discussing everything that's in here. But just like to point out that from the design bit, this was made by the same person that made the other record and in the book. He actually spent hours cutting tape and making a new font out of it. It turned out really nice and obviously very much on theme. Yeah, and it's a triple vinyl. It's totally crazy. Magnetband Untergrund, OST. It's in German, of course. It's basically tape music underground. I think what it means in English. Yeah. You can touch them if you want. I mean, if Emilian allows, the records are theirs.
I have another question regarding the relationship between Portugal and Spain, especially in terms of music, let's say, because you mentioned many times that you don't have this studio in Portugal or Spain.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about that?
Well, again, I don't have full property to talk about Spain. I do know a bit of the history, and I know for a fact that politically, the dictatorship in Spain was very much similar to the Portuguese one, so, which is no progress. Let's just stay feudal and rural. Spain was bigger. There were people with access in Portugal that managed to move abroad or study abroad a little bit. More Spanish did so, but they didn't have an electronic music studio as well. They didn't have anything resembling an experimental music movement. The only thing that really started happening there was, again, punk music and post-punk music in the late 70s and in the 80s. And again, this is an interesting thing, which is we both had similar political orientations under our dictatorships, but we didn't relate to each other at all. I mean, the border was a no man's land and still is now. It's still the effect of decades of isolationism, because both countries were isolationist. They weren't friends. Portugal had no friends. We just wanted to stay there with our African provinces, you know, and celebrate the great nation that we once were, like 500 years ago. That was the official thing. So the country ended in the border with Spain. There were no relationships at all. Nothing could develop in between both countries. And this is also interesting because it takes a lot of time to overcome this. I'm working in experimental music in Portugal, and up until 5-6 years ago, I had almost nobody to relate to in Spain, even though it was a country that's 5 times as big as us and it has 5 times the population. There are actually less experimental music festivals, less experimental music labels or whatever So we were at the very end of the continent, and our only neighbor we couldn't really build a circuit for live music or for tours or whatever with them. It's getting a bit better now, but it's still not 5 times as big as ours is, not even close as it should be. At the most, it's the same in size. So again, we had similar ideologies, each of our regimes, but we kept alone. We didn't even relate to the only neighbor we have. So that brings a lot of complexity, of course, into the whole music scene as well.
I'm curious if you know anything about the archives of the Radio Free Portugal, so transmitted from Bucharest.
No, but I've been again warned about this because Octave wrote to me like a couple more than a couple months ago, saying he had access to this, and I will investigate it. It was actually something that we've never heard about. I haven't heard about it. It's not common knowledge.
I think that PCP has some part of the archives, and
they will have something for sure. Yeah. I was. Though I respect them, I was never affiliated with PCP, or PCP is the Communist Party in Portugal. So I'm sure there are people who know.
Do you know what music they transmitted
No.
at the time? No.
I don't. But I want to. I want to know.
Not that much music, though, from what I know. All speeches, it was kind of like a newsletter. I don't know. We'll have to find out. I don't think they were focused on music.
They had music for sure. They had these cultural shows with poets and so on.
Okay.
What I listened to, but I don't know what.
But thanks for bringing it up, because this is an important part of what this project could also be, and I'm sure that we'll find a way to feature this on the database, at least the very existence of those transmissions and broadcasts. Yeah, thanks.
Can we see the Romanian page?
No. I mean, I'm here. I'm an easy target then for it's missing this, it's missing that. You shouldn't have. So do it on your own. Otherwise, I'll have to defend myself. But it's there.